You're standing in front of a shelf with 50 types of jam at the supermarket, or scrolling through an endless list of shows on Netflix, or perhaps browsing job listings online, trying to choose your next career move. And suddenly, you feel not joy from these possibilities, but anxiety, heaviness, a desire to simply close the tab, walk away from the shelf, postpone the decision for later. Sound familiar? You think you're afraid of making the wrong choice. But the truth is deeper. You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid that everything will work out. Today, we'll dive into the greatest paradox of modern life, why an abundance of possibilities doesn't make us happier, but often deeply unhappy. Imagine two stores. The first has 3 types of jam, the second has 30. Which is more attractive? Obviously the second. More options, more freedom, more possibilities to find exactly what you need. But psychologist Barry Schwartz, in his work, The Paradox of Choice, discovered something contrary to our intuition. People more often purchased from the store with fewer options, and those who bought from the store with more choices felt less satisfied with their decision. Why? Because each additional option isn't just a possibility, it's a burden. Think about it. When you have 3 options, you can compare them, weigh the pros and cons. When there are 30 options, you know you can't fully analyze them. Therefore, somewhere, there might be a better option that you missed. This is how a special kind of regret is born. Regret over unused opportunities, and fear of missing out on something better. Another time I'll watch this great movie, you tell yourself, adding it to your bookmarks, and you know that, most likely, you'll never return to it. Our brains evolved in a world of limited resources. On the savannah, there weren't 50 types of food to choose from. There were a few, and each was valuable. Today we live in a world of abundance of information, abundance of goods, abundance of life paths. We can choose from thousands of professions, live in any city in the world, meet dozens of potential partners through apps, consume unlimited content. This unprecedented freedom should have made us happier. But something went wrong. Instead of feeling freedom, anxiety. Instead of satisfaction, doubt. When we choose one thing, we give up another. That's obvious. But with expanding possibilities, the opportunity cost, what we give up, also grows. So you decided to go to the movies this weekend. In a world with 3 theaters, it's a simple choice. In a world with 30 streaming services, dozens of theaters, festivals, concerts, museums, parks, friends calling you to meet, it's a choice that forces you to give up dozens of other pleasant possibilities. And your brain knows this, and it counts the losses. American-Israeli psychologist Daniel Kahneman showed in his prospect theory that our brains feel losses more acutely than gains. Losing $100 causes more pain than the joy of finding the same amount. Now multiply this by all the possibilities you lose by choosing just one option. You face constant losses, constant rejections of something. The result? Decisions become harder. The joy from choice becomes smaller. Doubts, stronger. There are 2 types of people when it comes to decision-making. Ilarambis. Look for an option that meets their minimum standards. Found one? Great. Decision made. Maximizers want the best, absolutely the best. They consider all possible options, compare, analyze, hesitate, and often feel regret even after making a decision. Guess who's happier? Psychologist Barry Schwartz found that maximizers earn more money on average in their first job after college, because they search longer and more thoroughly, but they are much less satisfied with their choice. Think about it. Objectively better results, subjectively worse experience. The modern world pushes us to be maximizers. You deserve the best. Don't settle for less, advertising shouts. Social media shows the perfect lives of others. And we start to believe that somewhere out there is the perfect option, the perfect job, the perfect partner, the perfect life. And when we don't find it, because perfection doesn't really exist, we feel like failures. I just want someone else to decide for me. How many times have you caught yourself thinking this? Every choice requires energy, mental labor, comparing options, predicting consequences, assessing risks. Our brain has a limited amount of mental energy. Psychologists call this willpower or ego depletion. When you make many decisions, your brain literally gets tired. Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck every day. Mark Zuckerberg wears gray t-shirts. They eliminated one choice from their lives to save mental energy for more important decisions. But most of us don't have that luxury. We're forced to choose constantly, from food to career. And when there are too many options, the brain often simply shuts down. This is called choice paralysis. You postpone decisions, procrastinate, choose by default, or don't choose at all. I'll look later, I'll decide tomorrow, need to think more about it. And so, day after day, decisions that could change your life remain unmade. Psychologist Martin Seligman, in his experiments on learned helplessness, discovered an amazing thing. People who believe they control the situation feel better, even if that control doesn't actually exist. The paradox of modernity: we have more choice than ever, and often less control than we think. You can choose from thousands of TV channels and streaming services, but you don't choose which shows will be there. Thousands of dating apps, but algorithms determine who you'll see. Moreover, sometimes the choice itself is an illusion. Psychologist Dan Ariely showed how often our decisions are manipulated, nudging us toward the right choice, creating distracting options, or setting default options. For example, restaurant menus often add a very expensive item to make others seem more economical. You feel like you're choosing freely, but in reality, your choice is being manipulated. So often, we're not only overloaded with choice, but that choice itself isn't entirely ours. If I had chosen a different profession back then, if I hadn't moved to this city, if I hadn't gotten divorced, few things torment us as much as alternative life scenarios, roads not taken. Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard said, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." When options become too many, freedom itself can cause existential fear. In traditional societies, there was less of this fear. Your fate was often determined at birth. You inherited your father's profession. You married someone from your village. You lived and died where you were born. Today we can be anyone, live anywhere, create ourselves again and again. And with this freedom comes a heavy burden, responsibility for all unused opportunities. Psychotherapist Irvin Yalom called this existential guilt. Guilt for a life not lived to its fullest, for unrealized possibilities. What if all this choice anxiety was just in vain? Imagine your life as a river. You think that at each fork, you freely choose the direction. But what if, in reality, most of our free choices are determined by the current? Our genes, our upbringing, our environment, random events, social structures, economic opportunities. Sociologist Pierre Bourdieu introduced the concept of habitus, a system of stable dispositions that determine our tastes, desires, preferences. What we perceive as freedom of choice is often merely a manifestation of previously formed dispositions. You think you freely chose your profession? Perhaps it was a combination of your family's socioeconomic status, available education, random encounters, cultural stereotypes about a successful career, the historical period in which you live. This doesn't mean there is no choice, but perhaps it's not as all-encompassing as we think. And here's the paradox. Awareness of the limitations of choice can make us happier. Less anxiety about wrong decisions, less regret about unused opportunities. So what do we do with this tyranny of choice? How do we find satisfaction in a world of endless possibilities? 1. Learn to be a satisficer, not a maximizer. Accept that good enough is often really good enough. Set minimum criteria for your decisions and accept the first option that meets them. Does this phone meet my basic needs? Yes, I'll take it even if there are better models. Marcus, limit your options. Paradoxically, self-limitation often makes us happier. Choose restaurants with smaller menus. Limit the number of shows you watch simultaneously. Create sensible boundaries for yourself. Delegate minor decisions. Nobel Prize-winning economist Herbert Simon introduced the term bounded rationality. We can't optimize every decision, so delegate the minor ones. Trust friends' recommendations. Use random selection for small things. Establish routines for repetitive decisions. 4. Apply the if-then rule. Instead of deciding anew each time, create rules. If it costs less than $20, I buy without thinking. If more, I think for a day. Practice preemptive acceptance. Before making an important decision, psychologically accept both options. Imagine you've already chosen A. How do you feel? Now imagine you've chosen B. What's your reaction? Your body often knows the answer before your mind does. Focus on the process, not the outcome. Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, control what you can control, and the outcome is often beyond your control. Focus not on whether you chose the right path, but on how you walk the chosen path. Psychotherapist Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps, concluded that even in the most horrible conditions, a person retains one fundamental freedom, the freedom to choose their attitude toward the situation. Perhaps it's not about which path we choose, but how we walk it. Not what we have, but how we relate to what we have. Zen Buddhism teaches the concept of enlightenment in the ordinary, appreciating the cup of tea you're drinking now rather than dreaming of a better variety. Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius advised, love the fate that has fallen to you. And perhaps the greatest wisdom lies in understanding that life is not a linear path with clear forks, but an organic process that unfolds with each breath we take. Ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle spoke of telos, the ultimate purpose, the destiny of each thing. An arrow has a purpose, to fly to its target. A human has a purpose, to strive for happiness through a virtuous life. Perhaps in a world of unlimited choice, we need to return to this concept of purpose. Not external, imposed, but internal, authentic. When an archer aims, he sees only the star he's targeting. The rest of the sky disappears. The same goes for us. When we find our true path, other possibilities don't disappear, but they cease to torment us. We simply become indifferent to them. And then the tyranny of choice transforms into the freedom of purpose, and only then are we truly free. So tell me in the comments, what difficult choice are you struggling with right now? And what's holding you back from taking a step and embracing your chosen path? Perhaps understanding that we're all in this together, all confused before the ocean of possibilities, is the first step toward liberation from the tyranny of choice.